Philip from PracticeGuitarNow.com, and today in this video I want to talk to you about improving your sweep picking technique. You've probably already seen lots of lessons and videos and exercises on this particular technique, but if you're like most guitar players, you've probably found at some point that you've hit a wall at some level in your sweep picking abilities. And today I want to show you one effective practice approach for getting very clear and specific about what particular mistakes are holding back your sweep picking progress. Doing this does not require you to practice a whole bunch of different sweep picking exercises. All it requires you to do is to learn how to practice guitar a little bit differently than what you're used to right now, so that you can identify what mistakes you're making that you're not aware of right now that are holding you back from playing sweep picking the way you want. So in this video I'll show you one effective way to do this. To get started, pick an arpeggio that you already know how to play. It can be any arpeggio that you want on either 3 strings or 5 strings or 6 strings, doesn't matter. For this example, I'll be using an A minor 5-string arpeggio that goes like this. And the biggest problem that guitar players have when they practice arpeggios is they begin to play fast long before they're ready. And as a result, their playing sounds sloppy, but they're not exactly sure which notes are sloppy and what is causing them to be sloppy. So now I'm going to show you how to practice to avoid this problem. Taking the arpeggio that you selected as your example, I want you to play it now, but I want you to pick each note 3 times with the pick, and that will sound like this. Now, doing this accomplishes several things. First, it makes the job for the picking hand much harder because you have to pick each note 3 times, obviously, and you have to time the transitions from string to string just right in order to get your hands to stay in sync. Since your fretting hand is still only playing 1 note, but your fretting hand is playing 3 times on each note, the 2-hand synchronization aspect becomes much more challenging. And what that does is it exposes any potential weaknesses you have in your normal playing with arpeggios with 2-hand synchronization and makes it much more obvious. Essentially what you're doing is you're making some part of your arpeggio playing much more difficult than it normally is, and by doing so you're exposing certain weaknesses that are normally hidden when you play slowly and making it easier for yourself to notice them. So now that you've seen how there are several benefits to be had by practicing the arpeggio with picking each note 3 times, because it exposes your 2-hand synchronization challenges and also your general picking hand issues, there are also lots of advantages for your fretting hand as well. When you're picking each note of the arpeggio 3 times, there's more time left to pay attention to what the fretting hand is doing, making sure that each note is being fretted perfectly. This will help you to avoid the problem that I mentioned earlier, where guitar players would start to play faster long before they're ready and never really take the time to get their fretting hand technique perfect. As an example, a lot of guitar players have trouble doing the finger rolling motions cleanly when they happen in many arpeggio shapes. For example, in the arpeggio I played just a moment ago, finger rolling happens on strings 4 and 3. There, I have to play 2 notes on 2 different strings at the same fret with the same finger. So that requires me to roll my ring finger backwards. So to practice this, it is very helpful when you have an additional second or 2 of time that allows you to make sure that the finger rolling motion is done perfectly, cleanly, and accurately. And you do have that extra time for yourself because you're going to be picking each note of the arpeggio 3 times. And then it sounds like this. So you can isolate the rolling motion very well in this way and make sure you really have it down perfectly. Then, after practicing it in isolation, practice it in the context of the entire arpeggio. The reason why I wanted you to practice this idea by picking each note of the arpeggio 3 times versus 2 times or 4 times or some other number is because I want you to maintain the same picking direction when you're ascending and when you're descending the arpeggio. When you're ascending the arpeggio, playing from the low string to the high string, you're playing each note with a downstroke. And when you're descending, you're playing each note with an upstroke. And so by picking each note 3 times, When it comes time to change strings, you are still picking with a downstroke when you're ascending and with an upstroke when you're descending. If I told you to pick each note of the arpeggio 2 times or 4 times, then you would be essentially alternate picking the notes of the arpeggio, and that would not be sweep picking, so that would defeat the point of practicing sweep picking in this way. After you practice this idea slowly, you can of course take this concept and then practice speeding it up with the metronome in the same way that you practice your normal arpeggios. However, you should know that because the job for the picking hand is going to be much harder, your maximum speed of practicing arpeggios in this way is going to be much lower than your maximum speed with arpeggios overall. But that is no problem, because this is only a training exercise that you use to become aware of your mistakes, fix them, and then make your normal arpeggios much faster as a result. The specific example I just demonstrated as it applies to this arpeggio is an illustration of a broader practicing idea that I call exaggerating the difficulty while practicing. And what that refers to is taking any problem that you're having in your guitar playing and finding ways to intentionally exaggerate it by putting it under a hypothetical microscope and finding ways to make it much more difficult than it already is. And by doing that, it becomes much easier to notice the specific things you need to do to fix the problem that you're having in your playing. The actual example as it applies to sweep picking is only one illustration of this idea. And to learn more about this general concept of exaggerating the difficulty and to see a lot more examples in other areas of your guitar technique that can be fixed using this method, I invite you to come to my website and to check out a video that deals with this practicing idea in a lot more detail. You can find the link to this video at the bottom of the screen, and there's also a clickable link directly below the video player. So click on the link now and you will take into the video page, and I look forward to seeing you there in a few minutes.